I never thought I would be in this position, questioning everything I thought I knew about my wife. Lisa and I had been married for 6 years, building a life together, sharing dreams and making promises. I believed that we were doing well. But looking back, I should have noticed the cracks that had formed long before everything fell apart. It all started with little things. She withdrew, her laughter became forced, her affection sporadic. Her phone, once carelessly left on the table, was now always in her hand or lying down. She started working late more often, attending girls' nights out that she had never paid attention to before. At first, I told myself it was stress, that she just needed space. But doubts crept in. Then came the lies, small inconsistencies in her stories, hesitation before answering simple questions. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But deep down, something was wrong. And once this suspicion took root, I could not get rid of it. I had to find out the truth. The doubt consumed me. Every glance at her phone, every late-night outing, every vague excuse, it all felt like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to put together. But I had to. One night, while she was in the shower, I picked up her phone. It was locked, of course. She never used to have a password. That alone was enough to make my stomach turn. I put it down before she could catch me, but the seed had been planted. I started watching her more closely. She'd smile at texts she never explained. She'd pull away when I touched her. The intimacy that once defined us had been reduced to obligation, and even that was rare. Then, one evening, she said she was meeting her friend Rachel for drinks. Something in her voice felt rehearsed. So I followed her. She never made it to the bar. Instead, she pulled into a motel parking lot. My hands clenched the wheel as I watched her step out, fix her hair, and walk inside. I already knew. But seeing it? That was different. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded in my chest, my breathing slow and controlled, but my mind was a storm. I wanted to burst into that motel, drag her out, demand answers, make her see what she was throwing away. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I waited. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Finally, the door opened, and there she was, Lisa, my wife, adjusting her dress, smoothing her hair, looking around as if checking for onlookers. A few seconds later, a man stepped out behind her. Tall, well-dressed, confident. He placed a hand on her lower back, and she leaned into it like it was the most natural thing in the world. I felt sick. They kissed. A slow, deliberate kiss, not one of regret or guilt, but something passionate, something I hadn't seen from her in years. And in that moment, any hope of this being a misunderstanding died. She wasn't just cheating. She was in love with him, and she had no idea I was watching. I drove home in silence, my grip on the steering wheel tightening with every mile. The image of them together burned into my mind, her smile, the way she leaned into him, the kiss. It wasn't just lust. It was comfort, familiarity. How long had this been going on? How many times had she come home to me after being with him? By the time I pulled into the driveway, my emotions had shifted. The shock was gone, replaced by something colder. This wasn't going to end with me begging for answers. I wouldn't confront her like some desperate fool, demanding explanations she'd twist into lies. No, if she thought she could deceive me, she was wrong. I needed a plan. So I played my part. When she walked through the door later that night, I acted as if nothing had changed. She kissed my cheek, murmuring about how drinks with Rachel had been fun. I nodded, smiling, even as my skin crawled where her lips touched. She had no idea I knew. And that was going to be my advantage. For the next few days, I studied her like never before. Every move, every excuse, every lie. She had no clue I was watching. That was the beauty of it. I was no longer the trusting husband she thought I was. I was something else now. She kept up the charade, texting late at night, slipping away for errands that took hours. I didn't stop her. Instead, I started preparing. If she was going to betray me, I would make sure she paid for it. First, I gathered evidence. I installed a small voice recorder in her car, checked our shared bank statements, even went through old phone records. It didn't take long to confirm my suspicions. This wasn't new. It had been going on for months, maybe longer. Then, I went further. I needed leverage. If Lisa thought she could screw me over and walk away clean, she was dead wrong. She wasn't just going to lose me. She was going to lose everything. And when I was done, she wouldn't even see it coming. The first step was securing my assets. Lisa and I shared a house, bank accounts, and investments. If she ever decided to leave, or worse, try to take me for everything, I needed to be ahead of her. Quietly, I moved funds into a private account she didn't know about. I consulted a lawyer, framing my questions as hypotheticals, just to understand my position. And most importantly, I made sure I had evidence, photos, text logs, even recordings of her phone calls in the car. Proof of her betrayal. But I wasn't just planning to expose her. That would be too easy. No, I wanted her to feel what I felt. The shock, the humiliation, the helplessness. So I played the perfect husband. I brought her flowers one evening, just to watch her squirm with guilt. I planned a weekend getaway, pretending to be the loving man she was so eager to betray. She smiled. She kissed me. She thought she was winning. She had no idea I was setting her up for the biggest fall of her life. The night before everything fell apart, Lisa lay beside me in bed, scrolling through her phone, completely at ease. She had no idea I knew. No idea what was coming. I had planned everything down to the last detail. The financials were in place. Our joint account slowly drained into my private one. I had already met with a divorce lawyer, ensuring I had the upper hand when it came time to walk away. But before I made my move, I wanted one final piece of satisfaction. The next evening, I told her I had a work trip coming up and would be gone overnight. Her face remained neutral, but I saw the flicker of excitement in her eyes. She thought she had the perfect opportunity to see him, and that was exactly what I wanted. I left as planned, but instead of heading out of town, I parked down the street and waited. Sure enough, within an hour, he arrived at my house. My house. I watched them, my pulse steady. Tomorrow, she would wake up to a nightmare. I let them have their night. Let them think they were safe, wrapped up in their little fantasy. Lisa had no idea that while she was betraying me in our home, I was making sure she would regret it for the rest of her life. Early the next morning, before they woke up, I put the final part of my plan into motion. I had already gathered the proof, now it was time to use it. I sent the photos, the call recordings, and the text logs to a few key people, her family, close friends, even her boss. She prided herself on her reputation, on being seen as the perfect wife, the responsible professional. That image was about to shatter. Then, I made the call to the lawyer, to the bank, to everyone who needed to know that I was done with her. By the time Lisa rolled over in bed, stretching lazily beside her lover, she had no idea her world was already crumbling. And the best part? I was going to be there to watch it happen. I waited outside, leaning against my car as the sun rose. I imagined the moment she checked her phone, how her lazy morning bliss would turn into panic, how the man beside her would go from comfort to chaos. It was almost poetic. Then, it happened. The front door swung open, and Lisa stumbled out, clutching her phone, her face pale with shock. She looked around frantically, then spotted me. For a second, we just stared at each other. I could see the realization sink in. She knew. She knew that I had done this. "What did you do?" she finally whispered, her voice trembling. I smiled. "I made sure everyone knows exactly who you are." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Behind her, the man, her affair partner, stood in the doorway, shirtless and confused. He had no idea his life was about to get complicated too. Lisa had betrayed me without remorse. Now, she was the one left scrambling for control. And I wasn't finished yet. Lisa's breathing was ragged, her hands shaking as she scrolled through her phone, reading the messages, the proof of her betrayal sent to everyone she cared about. Her reputation, her carefully constructed life, was crumbling right before her eyes. "You ruined my life," she choked out, stepping toward me. I let out a quiet laugh. "No, Lisa, you did that all by yourself." Behind her, her lover shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing he had stepped into a disaster far bigger than just a fling. I made sure to send his wife the proof too. Yes, he was married. Lisa wasn't just a cheater, she was a homewrecker. She tried to speak, to reason, maybe even to beg, but I was already getting into my car. There was nothing left to say. My lawyer would handle the rest. The house? Mine. The money? Protected. As I drove away, I didn't feel anger anymore. No pain. No regret. Just satisfaction. Lisa had played her game. She just never expected me to win.